Howdy, I'm Rex Hooper, and I've been asked by my favorite website, Spaghetti Western Daily, to answer a few questions about westerns. And hey, it's my favorite subject, so I'm going to share my answers with you right now. Would you mind giving us a little insight into what the Natalie Price Band is all about? Well, I'm glad you asked me that, Icky. You see, the Natalie Price Band, or Natalie Price as they call themselves, they're a band from Scotland, and they asked me to come and sing with them. This was a wee while back. They made a record called Somewhere Outside of Town, a kind of American folk record. I guess they called me in to add a little bit of authenticity, getting a cowboy singer in. Well, I stuck around, and we made a great record together that you should check out, called Frontera USA, a spaghetti western. The boys over in the band, Natalie Price, they said they were making the world's first haggis western, which was inspired by the spaghetti westerns, and they wanted me to sing on it. I gotta say, it's some of the greatest spaghetti western music made since, maybe even since Morricone himself. And then a few favorites, please. Top spaghetti movies. Well, there's an awful lot of great spaghetti western movies I could list here. Now, the obvious choice, the ones that is not going to be news to anyone, is the Sergio Leone Clint Eastwood trilogy. That's Fistful of Dollars, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Now, those are the greatest. But hey, I imagine if you're here on Spaghetti Western Daily, you already know those ones. So let's think of a few other real good ones that maybe go under the radar. Now, I have a real soft spot for Sergio Corbucci's Navajo Joe. I just really love that movie. In fact, I love most of Corbucci's movies, including The Great Silence, which is one of the great spaghetti western movies. Seems to be getting more recognition these days, but for a while there, it went pretty much under the radar. Some other greats are Hellbenders and Django, of course. The Big Gun Down, starring Lee Van Cleef, or Death Rides a Horse, starring Lee Van Cleef. My favorite director, so my favorite spaghetti director. Well, you know, Sergio Leone made some of the best ones, and perhaps he is the best director. Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Once Upon a Time in the West. I mean, these are all the best, and they're directed the best. But, well, we already know him, and maybe the real essence of what makes the spaghetti westerns, I would say, is Corbucci. Corbucci just had that razor edge. He was just a sort of a nastiness, a darkness to him that I find absolutely thrilling. My favorite actor, well, I reckon that's probably Lee Van Cleef. I have a lot of favorite cowboy actors. You can check out a video I made that was pretty popular on YouTube of my top 5 favorite cowboy actors, and there's a few spaghetti western actors in there. For me, there's maybe 2 really great performances I can think of actresses in spaghetti westerns, and that is, well, the one that first comes to mind is Once Upon a Time in the West, starring Claudia Cardinale, which is an absolutely electrifying performance, and it really is her movie, I reckon. Even more so than Charles Bronson. She seems to be the heart of that whole movie. But there's also, she's not an Italian actress, but it's her performance in a spaghetti western that I think is absolutely great, and that's Susan George as Sonny in Sonny and Jed, which is another absolutely fantastic performance. Favorite score / soundtrack composer? That would have to be the maestro himself, Ennio Morricone. And in second place, after Ennio Morricone, well, that's a trickier one. Morricone is way up there. He is the best spaghetti western composer. But in second place is, that's a bit more tough to pick out just one. 2 names come to mind, and that would be Bruno Nicolai and Louis Bacalov. And maybe Louis Bacalov just has the edge. Just a few more hits in there. I absolutely adore the soundtrack for Django. Bullet for the General, another absolutely fantastic one. His Name is King. Oh, that gorgeous score for The Grand Jewel. Who or what are your main musical influences? Who or what are my main musical influences? Well, I guess my main musical influences are those composers we were talking about. The Bruno Nicolais, the Ennio Morricone's, the Louis Bakalovs. Those are the Who's and the What's. Now that's an interesting question. What are my main musical influences? Well, I suppose it would be the sounds of the animals. The coyote barks and wails. The wind is always an interesting sound. The clang of metal as it falls. These are some what's. Good question. What was the first movie that really grabbed you? Well, considering I've been watching movies my whole life, and the first movie that probably grabbed me, if I was being honest, was like a kid's movie or something. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about spaghetti westerns. This is Spaghetti Western Daily. So the first movie that grabbed me in terms of spaghetti westerns would probably be Fistful of Dollars. That was the first one I saw, and probably the first one a lot of people saw, and opened us up to the idea of westerns in general. I think before Fistful of Dollars, I was aware of westerns, but it was that movie particularly that got me hooked, got its claws in me. Maybe that's not quite so interesting an answer, because so many people would say the same. Here's one for you. Death Rides a Horse was another movie that absolutely grabbed me. I think it was Death Rides a Horse that made me first realize that spaghetti western was a genuine genre. I'd seen the Clint Eastwood trilogy, and I knew that those films were, a thing, but they were all made by the same people. It was kind of its own thing. When I became aware of spaghetti westerns in general, the fact that there are so many and made by so many different people, was Death Rides a Horse. And that movie is so good. And okay, it's got Lee Van Cleef, who was in some of them other movies, but it was different. It was his own story. And it opened up the idea of the spaghetti western, that this was a whole world of movies out there. Now, turns out, not all of them are as good as Death Rides a Horse, but that is a movie that absolutely grabbed me. Do you have a music or film-related project that makes you think, damn, I wish I had done that? And if so, what is it? Well, I reckon the question's trying to ask me, is there something I liked so much that I wish I'd had that idea? And, the answer to that is no. If it's really good, I'm just happy that it exists and I can enjoy and appreciate it. But maybe there's another way of reading that question. If there was something that I wish I could have done, maybe something that was kind of terrible, how would I have done it to make it better? Well, recently, I was watching a Western television show, a modern spaghetti western, and that was That Dirty Black Bag. And That Dirty Black Bag was not very good, at least not in my opinion, but I wish I had done it. All the pieces were right. The locations, the cinematography, even the actors. Just some tweaks in the story or how you would have told it. Yeah, I wish I'd have done that. Maybe what I ended up with wouldn't be any better, but I'd like to have a crack at it. You are creating a super band. Who's in it, and what are they doing? Well, the most super band I know is Natalie Price. Natalie Price are the most super band. And what are they doing? They're making some of the best spaghetti western music around today. Check out their record, Frontera USA. And again, but this time you are creating a super movie. Who's in it, and what are they doing? Ooh, a super movie. Well, it would probably be a western. If I was the director of a movie, I would like to direct my own version of Blood Meridian. And I would probably stray really far from the source material. I would totally make it my own. I would get lost down in the south of Spain where they made the spaghetti westerns. And I would go on my own strange mission that mirrored the story of Blood Meridian, but me as the insane gang leader leading them all, which would be the actors and crew, onto this terrible mission. And I'm sure from that insane voyage we would have something interesting, a strange and wonderful western, I reckon. On that theme, if you could collaborate with anyone at all, dead or living, who would you choose and why? If I could collaborate with anyone, it would probably be Ennio Morricone. Wouldn't that be incredible? I'd like to do a full Peter Tevis. You know Peter Tevis? He was the American singer that went to Italy. He originally made the song for Fistful of Dollars with Ennio Morricone, and they cut out his vocal for the movie version. So, he went to the producers and said, "Hey, this ain't right, I'm gonna sue yous." And they said, okay, we'll give you anything you want. And he said, "I want to make a full album with Ennio Morricone. That's the deal I want. That question you've asked me, who would I collaborate with? Ennio Morricone. I want to do a Peter Tevis. I want an album with Morricone." Interestingly enough, that Peter Tevis album is not great. And it's a bit patchy in parts, but still has some absolutely incredible songs. And hey, that's the best you could hope for, isn't it? Just a few good songs. Do you have a favorite location or country for making films? Yeah, certainly. When I'm making my films, I mostly like to film in the south of Spain. Aside from music making, do you have any other interesting interests? Yes, it would be fencing. I'm a top hand at the épée. Before music, did you have normal jobs? And if so, what was the worst? I've worked just about every single kind of job there is, and most of them are the worst. But one of the ones that might be of interest to you was trucking. Yeah, that's right. Trucking is one of the worst jobs. Those long, lonesome roads, away from home, working without rest, working with very little sleep. It's one of the most dangerous jobs in the world, statistically. Yeah, trucking. On that note, who or what made you think, fuck day jobs, I'm gonna do this? I don't think it was a single decision. I think it was something that was in me the whole time. Ever since I was very young, I was always interested in performing, doing characters and shows and singing songs and telling stories. And I've been doing it ever since. Even when very important things in life, like other jobs or raising children, happen, and that takes priority, still part of me can't help but continue to want to create. I remember when my daughter was first born, I would lay awake at night, thinking of whole songs in my head, and hoping that the next day I'd have a free minute to write it down. Who do you think might be a person to go to the pub with? Who would I like to go for a drink with? Well, maybe someone that might be a lot of fun would be Klaus Kalinsky. Klaus Kalinsky was in a lot of spaghetti westerns. Now, it was actually the non-spaghetti western films is where you got the best performances out of him, and those would be the Werner Herzog films. But he turned in some pretty good performances in a few of his spaghetti westerns. He played sort of a good guy in God Said to Cain, and he played a genuine good guy in Bullet for the General. But mostly, Klaus Kinski's good at doing villains. Whether it's just a side heavy, like in For a Few Dollars More, he's the Hunchback, or if he's the main villain, like Loco in The Great Silence, he's pretty good. Another good turn for old Klaus Kinski is not particularly good movie, which is His Name is King, but I liked Klaus Kalinsky in it. He started the movie, he's supposed to be the good guy, but he's so intense and terrifying, the twist that he's actually the villain doesn't really come as much of a twist, but that's all part of the fun. Yeah, I'm sure going for a drink with this guy would be absolute chaos. I can imagine the deranged, wild night we could have together. And of course, who do you think might be a total pain in the arse to go to the pub with? Well, I reckon that would be Klaus Kalinsky on another day, depending on his mood. What is the stupidest question you have ever been asked? Stupidest question ever? Where do you get your ideas from? Briefly, your thoughts on the future of the European Western. Oh, I think the future of the European Western's looking strong. They had that Dirty Black Bag series. I mean, it weren't great, but it wasn't without its charm. And heck, maybe more will follow. People like me that think, hey, I could do a better job of that. Heck, maybe even they'll give me the opportunity to make that Western that I want to make. Or several Westerns. Maybe I could become one of the great European Western directors of the future. Watch this space. The state of British live music in general. Well, there was that global pandemic, and that looked like that was going to shut down or totally collapse live music as it is. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I was kind of hoping it would. You know, live music in Britain got a bit bloated. The big festivals, sort of commodity music, it all became a bit soulless. You know, your massive stages and your Coldplays and whoever's would be playing their music and shut out all the more interesting acts. So if the British music scene completely collapsed, that would be fantastic. And you know why? Is because folks that really like music are never going to stop listening to music. So they could maybe, build up from the ground up. They'd find other places to play music and share their music with other folks. And that could be really interesting. Brexit and UK politics. It's hard to keep up. I reckon by the time I'm finished editing this video, who knows what'll the next thing be. All I know is that Brexit, well, perhaps it's too early to tell. Marmite. I love it. Lastly, do you have any new projects in the pipeline, particularly secret ones, that we should be looking out for? Well, I'm always working on something, but the point of a secret is not to tell anyone. So, I'm not going to tell you. Stay tuned. You'll find lots more from me. Certainly more music. And hell, who knows, maybe a new movie one day. That would be the dream. Thank you for your time, Icky. Oh, thank you for the questions, Icky. Well, thank you, Icky, for asking these questions. It was a pleasure. Last thing I want to add is to remind y'all to check out Frontera USA, my record, all inspired by spaghetti western soundtracks. And I'll see you later on, folks, further on, down the trail. If you have any other questions for this old chunk of coal, then leave them in the comments section below and I'll do my best to answer them.